Hi everyone. I want to go over some common mistakes I see in the assignment for this week. And so here's the worksheet with the headings and the months and the data entered and some formulas here doing totals for the rows and subtotals and totals across the columns here. So the first thing that you should notice if yours looks like this is that a couple of these cells have a little green triangle in them, and so if you click in those cells you'll see this little warning icon pop up, and if you click on the list arrow you'll see some feedback, and this says inconsistent formula. So I don't know what that means, but let's look at the formulas here. This is the sum function, and if we double click there we see that it's summing the row, which makes sense. Okay, we're summing across the row, and if we double click on the next one we see that's doing the same thing, but if we double click on this one we see that it's summing the two cells above instead of the row to the left. And how this can happen is if you enter these formulas one at a time instead of using the autofill handle, Excel looks first above the cell where you're entering the formula or function to see if there are numbers, and if so, then it uses the numbers above. So that's what's happened. So the way to fix this, a couple of different ways. One is to click on this and say copy the formula from above. Another one is to actually use the autofill handle. So if we click on a cell, there's a selection border around the cell, and on the bottom right corner there's a square, and that's the autofill handle. And if we move the mouse over that, it changes to a plus. If I left click and drag, I can then copy that formula as far as I want to. So if I do that, I have now copied the formula down, and so if we look at the formula that's in the cell that was giving us the error, double click, you see it's now the same as the other ones in the column. So we look down here at the bottom, we've got another one of those little green warning. If we click on that and click on the same issue, inconsistent formula. So if we're looking at this formula, we're summing a column, but if we look at this one, it's not, it's summing the row. So again, the fix for that could be to use the warning and fix it that way, or you can use the autofill handle to make these uniform all the way across. Okay. Now there's still some issues here. I've used the subtotal formula, which is subtotal, and the code here 109 tells Excel that I want to sum just the records that are showing in this table, but they're all showing right now. And then the range of the table is from D3 to D14, so D3 down to D14. You can see that's so that's good. But the total should also be summing all of these, but it's got a different number. So if we click in there and see, realize that the sum here for total is including the subtotal, so it's accidentally doubling the numbers listed up here. So we want to edit that, and we can do it by moving the mouse over the corner handle of the selection area, which is tricky to do when it's right above the cell we're working on, but I've got it there. You can see it's a double pointed arrow. If I left click, I can drag that up, so it only sums the same numbers in the table and not the subtotal. There's another way of doing that also, and that's up here in the formula bar. And if I just click and drag to select the 6 and then type a 4, again I've changed the range now to be just the table. So if I click OK, click the check mark to say that's OK, now we see that our subtotal and total are giving us the same numbers. So I need to copy that across here. And then the last thing is this cell here is supposed to be a test. So what we have in F14 here, F17, is the sum of this column, H3 down. So this is the sum of the rows, and then we're summing the sums to give us this number here. I'm gonna color it the same as the ones there. So these numbers here are summing each of these columns. So if we add those up, we should get the same number as summing the rows. However, what we put in this cell was not a formula summing these numbers. We have put H17, which is just this cell here. And that's just duplicating whatever's in this cell. You know, if I put text in this cell, the formula is going to produce a 0 because there's no numbers here. If I get rid of the formula and just use equal, it just repeats whatever's in this cell. So what we need is a better formula in here. So I'm going to undo. And so what I want to do here now is change the formula to be the sum of these columns, but not including the sum of the rows, because again, that would double our number, and it wouldn't be right. So if I click that, now we see that the sum of the columns here is the same result as the sum of the rows. So now that gives us confidence that our formulas are good. We don't have any green triangles from Excel telling us that something's wrong. And when we sum up the we sum the columns, we get the same outcome here as if we had when we sum the rows, and get that here. Now the last thing is making a table, so I'm going to select the area that I want to be in the table. I'm going to choose Format as Table, and we can choose any style we want. I just picked this one. And a real key thing to look for here is that the table has headers. The checkbox is checked because, in fact, the table does have headers. This top row is headers. It's not data. So click OK, and so now what you see is that there's a list arrow in each one of the header cells, and we can use that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll use the list arrow to sort this column from smallest to largest, and what you see is it keeps each row together as a record. It's one of the benefits of using the table. And then I'm going to use the filter options over here, and I'm going to click Select All to unselect all, and I'm going to click 3 months. Click OK. So now I'm only showing the months that I wanted to see. And you see now that the subtotal is only adding the months that are showing. So the subtotals now are different than the total because the total is still doing the whole table. So if I again go back and select all, now we see everything. The table here has a little marker on the corner of it, and so I can make the table a different size by dragging that marker. You can also click in the table and choose the Design tab in the ribbon, and then I can resize the table using the cell identifications, row and column. I can also convert this back to not a table by Convert to Range. So if I click there, it will basically undo my table. So those are a few features of Excel and some common mistakes that I see, and I thought those might help you as you work on the assignment this week.